Hey, Irene.
Hey.
Hey, friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about the infamous diesel heater.
What a cluster. And those in the United States know what the next word is. It's one of those classic things that many of us around the world deal with right now. You order something, it comes with instructions.
Well, it comes with misinstructions,
But the instructions have nothing to do with the model that they sent you.
and they're not right to begin with.
Right. So you're reading these instructions and you're trying to figure out what all the mistranslated words mean and how to interpret all of this stuff. And some of it you can figure out. Some of it's, if you know something about how diesel engines and stuff work, you know you have to bleed fuel lines and stuff like that. And other things you're just like, what does this have to do with anything? You know, if your phone gets stuck, what does a phone getting stuck have to do with my diesel heater? So yeah, it's one of those many learning experiences that we have.
It's a really frustrating situation for me. I've spent oodles of time going through online sources to gather more information.
And you know, a lot of times now when you buy products, irregardless of where the product is from in the United States, it will give you a quick startup guide. But then if you want more information, you have to go to a website. But when you go to that website, there's actually a real PDF sort of guide that you can go through page by page. You can print it out if you want to and all that other stuff. Yeah, not so much this time.
Well, it started off with the instructions not matching up with the unit that we purchased.
Right. The first thing, it was easy to spot, like the unit that's in the instruction book has one exit for the air, and we have four. And I'm like, oh, this is not even the same model.
So we start off there, and the other part is we also have a parts kit that doesn't match up with what the instructions say. And it turns out that we have some of one set of installation products and none of some others. And we have extras that don't belong in our kit at all.
Right, right. And, you know, it's not uncommon. You know, I just put together a whole bunch of flat pack stuff in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, she put together a bunch of shelves and,
Yeah.
and things like that.
And it's not uncommon. I'd seen some other people complain about some of their units and say, oh, well, this was missing, that was missing. And the things they were complaining about missing were generally easily replaced if you have a half-decent hardware collection in your own stuff. I wasn't concerned. I actually didn't wind up with anything missing from any of the stuff. I had a few extras. Extras are fine. I saved them. I have a little container that I was saving from each one because I figured if somebody shorts me in the next one, I'll be okay. And you expect that. You expect that. But wow, when it's just completely wrong.
Well, this diesel heater is very simple construction. It has a pump that pumps diesel up through a screen that atomizes the diesel, and it hits a glow plug, which turns it into fire. And there's a fan that blows through. That's what makes the hot air come out one end, and they also bleed a little bit of air into that combustion chamber to ignite the diesel. And that's all well and good. The unit went together reasonably well after we could sort out what the instructions were really trying to tell us. Now, some years ago, we put together a concrete mixer that we were working together, and it came to a point where only one of us could continue working on it. So Irene finished doing it, and she figured out some of the parts that they told us were supposed to go in one way should go in the other way.
Well,
the same thing is going on here.
Yeah, you're looking at pictures and you're trying to figure out, because sometimes the words will be wrong, but the picture will be right.
Yeah, their pictures aren't right either.
No, the pictures with the heater have nothing to do with this heater. There's some other godforsaken model that they're selling in, I don't know, Lithuania or someplace.
Well, what they're doing is they're selling a universal diesel heater. Their idea is that you tap into the car or van's diesel tank, and that's one way of getting diesel fuel to this heater, which makes perfect sense if you're putting it into agricultural equipment, a van, camper, or something like that.
Right, they've got all kinds of pictures of like tractors where you have a heater for your big compartment, and vans and caravans and all kinds of stuff.
Now, admittedly, I'm not installing it that way.
No.
This is a fixed installation.
Right.
It's going in our greenhouse so that we can have another way of heating the greenhouse when it's really cold. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be really cold coming up pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, we've survived the first cold dip. The next one is going to be about as bad as the previous one. So
well, this is
we'll
like
see
our
how it goes.
third one. I may go out and pick tomatoes tonight before
Yeah, I think
the sun goes down.
I think we'll go strip the peppers.
Yeah.
In any case, one of the things about these heaters is that some of them bear markings that say they are approved for use in residential situations.
Mm-hmm.
This heater doesn't say that.
Right.
Now, there are questions about, do you get a diesel smell or anything like that inside the building? The answer is no. The combustion chamber is physically isolated from the airflow that's being heated up. So there's not an issue there. Now, if you were to have the exhaust get caught back up in the intake, yeah, you'd smell
Right,
burning
and
diesel.
we've seen professional installations where there were issues with things like that, where and some big buildings where they should have known, some engineer really screwed up, where you have exhaust from a heater venting close to an intake for something else, and when they fire up the heater in the fall, they wind up having to evacuate the building because they're gassing people. I mean, there's stupid things can happen.
So some of these heaters do come with the appropriate badges for different countries. I haven't found any that have the right badges for the U.S. Now, there are badges for use in Europe. They have those kinds of type approvals. This unit is not intended to be used for heating a home. Mm-mm. So don't think about doing that. And if you do, don't tell me about it for
Yeah,
sure.
we don't want to know.
One of the things I'll be putting in the greenhouse is I'll be putting in a carbon monoxide detector, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, the last
Right
one.
now,
Actually, the last guy we had one and it failed.
it was annoying. It just started going off for no reason. And there's no burning material
Yeah,
whatsoever.
I mean, you could take it outside and it would still be going off, and you're like, I don't think all of Arizona's dying of carbon monoxide.
So I'll be putting in a carbon monoxide detector in the greenhouse. But first I have to get this heater running continuously.
Right.
What I found out, Ronald, thank you very much for your comment about your heater that you installed. He asked why I didn't use an all-in-one unit. And the answer is, we need to have this heater able to run when we're gone for a week, when we leave for a business trip, January, February, March, somewhere in there. And that won't work if I only have a 5 or 10 liter, even 15 liter diesel reservoir. It has to be more. So I'm mounting the reservoir outside right now, but I'll be replacing that reservoir that came with the heater with a larger unit. And I'll be doing some other things differently there. So that's number one. And also, thank you very much for commenting that you had a very similar or the same display as we have. One of the things I discovered in reading through hundreds of pages over the past several days is that different companies have different versions of the software on these units. So just because the unit looks the same and it seems to have the same interface doesn't mean that it's going to work the same. So I I found a very interesting thing was I was looking for information on these heaters when I first bought it quite some time ago. And I did a bunch of searches and nothing was showing up. Well, I'd find an odd bit here and there. But once I started uploading these shows, all of a sudden I'm getting deluged with information on these Chinese diesel heaters.
Which tells me that the search algorithm on YouTube is not working right.
Well, fortunately, most of these are coming out of Europe. There's one fellow in Australia who's done a great job taking these things apart, but he didn't cover the problems that I'm having. Right now, the main problem, I've figured out how to make the controller work. I've managed to figure out how to make it work with the heater itself, but the fuel pump isn't working. Well, I did a lot of investigation of that fuel pump, and the problem is the plug that goes into the fuel pump doesn't mate up with the socket correctly, so it doesn't get a good connection. So the pump will run for a little bit and it will stop because it loses the connection and it gives me the error code. Fortunately, I know what the error codes are, so that's good. Unfortunately, I can't make it stay working long enough to actually verify everything. Now, in the meantime, one of the things I did was I ordered some replacement parts today. I'm getting a new pigtail with the plug to go into that socket. So hopefully that will fix that problem. And just out of an abundance of caution, I've ordered another fuel pump.
Right. Yeah, we've had trouble before with pieces that were supposed to mate tightly not working.
Well, the problem that we face and everybody will face if you're buying something from, let's just call it an off-brand company, fundamentally direct from China, you may not be able to get replacement parts. Now, fortunately, these diesel heaters use exactly the same design as some commercial German heaters. They have exactly the same parts, so you can get parts to fix and repair these units. You may not be able to get the fan, but fortunately the unit's cheap enough. So I've figured out which commercial parts made up with this unit. So I'd hoped to have had this running a week ago.
At least.
But one issue after another has gotten in the way. And the biggest problem, as Irene mentioned, was the instructions don't match up with the unit that we have.
Nothing.
Well, it kind of does, but it doesn't.
Well, it gives you a hint that it might, but then when you start looking at the details, it doesn't.
Yeah. So you may have noticed in yesterday's show that I was really frustrated at the end because those instructions didn't match up with my controller. I figured out some online resources that gave me a few clues, but ironically, one of the problems that I had was this unit was not resetting correctly. And it turns out that in order to make this specific controller reset correctly, you have to disconnect the controller from the power, hold down two buttons and reconnect it to the power.
Which is like totally not a normal procedure.
Well, so that's now working. I'm now able to go through the menus. I just have to get this fuel pump fixed, which is really an issue of that plug. I'm cautiously optimistic that I'll be able to get that to work.
So I saw that we've had a couple of questions about the cost of diesel versus the cost of propane. And I think most people in the United States are like appalled at the price of propane right now.
I'm appalled at the price of diesel.
I'm appalled at the price of everything right now. So, you know.
Well, propane in our area is running about $4 a gallon. That's kind of the cheapest that I can buy it locally. If I drive about 60 miles or 70 miles, I can get it for about $2.50 a gallon. But then I have to drive that distance and drive back, and
you're using other fuel to do that. So, you know.
So diesel is about $5 a gallon. that's about a 20% difference, 25% difference between the cost of propane and the cost of diesel. If you look at the amount of heat energy that you can get out of a gallon of propane versus a gallon of diesel, propane is about 90,000 BTUs per gallon and diesel is about 130,000 BTUs per gallon. That's about a 40,000 BTU difference, which means that it's actually cheaper to run diesel to heat air.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, and our propane heater still works. I mean,
it works just fine. You know,
yeah.
one of the reasons why we went with the propane heater to start with is because it doesn't require any electricity.
Mm-hmm.
It has a thermostat that we can set and let it run, and it heats up the greenhouse. When the temperature gets down to about 40 degrees, the burner turns on and it heats it all up.
Right.
Now, someone asked about how we're powering this unit. It's a 12-volt heater. Mm-hmm. It uses 12 volts to run the fans and to move the pump. Instead of running a power supply that runs from 120 to 12 volts, I've elected to use an AGM battery. That's an absorbed glass mat battery. And I've hooked the heater to that battery. And then what I'll do then is run a trickle charger to the battery. What that means is we have a solar system here with batteries. So in theory, that shouldn't shut off. But we know sometimes that could happen. So in the event that we're gone and the heater is running, I don't want the heater to lose power in the middle of a cycle, because then it might continue running and just continue heating things up and heating things up.
Or it might shut off and never come back on by itself.
So I want to make sure that we have a continuous supply of energy to that heater.
Just once it would be nice to buy something and not have it turn into a major project.
Yeah, well, you know, it's possible to buy these diesel heaters from major league companies like Webasto and there are a few others. They're really expensive.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I didn't originally buy one of these was because I knew about them from the RV industry.
Mm-hmm.
But that was more than $1,000 for a heater, and that just didn't make economic sense.
Right.
Well, now you can buy knockoffs from China, and once they're working, they work perfectly fine. The difference is they're about a tenth of the price. There's a lot more that we'll be able to talk about in the future show, because there's a lot of interesting things about how this diesel heater works. I'm going to put some links in the show notes to a few of the people that have helped. And Steve from Digwell Greenfingers did mention a few things that caused me to go look. And it's interesting because when I started looking in the European space on YouTube,
mm-hmm.
I effectively used a VPN to make it think I was in Europe. All of a sudden I had this huge wealth of information, because there's a tremendous usage of this technology in workshop sheds. The one thing I will say is we do not recommend that you hook one of these units up to any kind of dwelling, any place you're going to be sleeping or even just living, because it could be dangerous. If you're going to try to use a diesel heater for heating your dwelling, there are plenty of commercial products available
mm-hmm.
that are safe to use. So it's time to say goodbye, Irene.
It is. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because theoretically someday we will have the heating fully functional when we get the replacement parts. And then we'll be able to tell you all the wonderful things about it and why you should try using something like that yourself, or not.
It's going to be about 3 weeks before I get that plugged, because that's how long everybody's taking.
Timbuktu, yeah.
So,
yeah, I actually got some stuff in that I ordered last week. I almost fell over today. I told our daughter when I was talking to her the other day that I had found some rare and unusual supplies that I have not been able to buy reliably for 2 years, because they come from Great Britain. The company's been sold, semi-reorganized, and everybody in the United States was out of it because of shipping problems. And the first place I ordered from, they said, "Oh yeah, we've got it." And they sent me one package, and I had ordered 3. And I'm like, "Where's my other 2 packages?" And they're like, "They're out of stock." And I'm like, "There's rules in the United States about that. You're not supposed to sell stuff you don't own." And I got a refund like less than a week later. But the stuff I ordered last week actually came this week, and I was shocked.
In fact, it came today.
Yes, it did. I was shocked because I hadn't really heard much from them. It was kind of crickets, and I hadn't decided to grump yet.
So you're going to say goodbye because our battery's going to run out.
Okay. So until next time, bye.
Bye. Keep brainstorming. My brain hurts.
Oh man, yeah.